Let us travel together, not to a distant land, but to the very origin of time itself, a place where every map loses meaning, and every concept of space is nothing more than a shadow that has yet to take form. Blavatsky says the universe once slept in an absolute stillness, a silence so deep that even a single thought could not slip through it. Before we take another step on this journey, I find myself wondering where you are listening from. Maybe a quiet room, maybe somewhere on the road. Feel free to share, if you wish, and if these mysteries speak to you, do not forget to subscribe, so we can explore far stranger stories together. Now imagine that from where you are sitting, we open a doorway to the moment when light itself did not yet exist. There was no sky, no color, no before or after. Only an endless sea of darkness so profound that any emotion you carried into it would dissolve like mist. Yet hidden inside that perfect void were the seeds of every star, every world, every life that would someday emerge, including the very moment you are experiencing right now. Picture yourself standing at the edge of an ancient secret where even the smallest tremor could change the fate of all creation. And then, in the middle of a silence that feels eternal, something unexpected happens. A gentle vibration, fragile but determined, like the first breath of a newborn, or the quiet tightening of your chest when you sense your life is about to turn a new page. That faint ripple moves outward, awakening the darkness, signaling that a great journey is beginning. What stirred the universe from its sleep? Who or what touched the void to spark that first movement? And is it possible that within each of us there is a similar moment of origin, a single breath capable of changing everything that comes after? If you are ready, take one more step with me, because the first light is waiting just ahead. Before there was history, there was memory, not the memory written by human hands, nor the kind passed down through stories, but a memory woven directly into the breath of the universe. And to understand it, we must step into a realm of stillness, where the very first witnesses are still standing, quietly observing since the dawn of creation. The ancient ones called them the silent witnesses, beings who do not speak and do not judge. They simply see. They simply hold every ripple of existence, the way a mother sits silently beside her child, saying nothing yet noticing every shift in the child's eyes. If you ever thought the universe was too vast to care about the smallest moments, then these witnesses are the reminder that nothing, not even the softest vibration, is forgotten. Imagine standing beside them, beings born from light, yet choosing to live in silence, watching the birth of stars, the shaping of radiance, and phenomena so old and indescribable that human language has never caught up. Their silence is not cold. It feels more like the calm of someone who has lived long enough to understand that the greatest stories always begin with moments no one pays attention to. And maybe you have felt something like this too. Moments where you became the silent witness of your own life, looking back and realizing that small choices or quiet nights ended up shaping everything you are living today. The silent witnesses hold the universe's memories in the same way we hold our most private truths, not to retell them, but to honor the fact that every beginning matters. When you go through sadness or confusion, there are times when you do not need words. You just need someone beside you who understands without speaking, And these beings are the cosmic reflection of that comfort. They watched the universe tremble for the first time. They watched darkness pierced by the faintest spark of light. They watched every mistake, every miracle, every attempt that creation ever made. They can remain silent for billions of years without feeling lonely, because for them, the memory of existence is enough companionship. And if you listen closely, you might feel that in your own life too, there are things that can only be understood in silence, just as the silent witnesses have guarded every heartbeat of creation since the first morning of time. As we take the next step, remember this. Everything you have lived has a witness. Even the moments you thought you endured alone. And sometimes silence itself is the deepest voice the universe has. Every breath you take is an echo of the very first breath the universe ever drew. A thought that sounds distant, yet feels strangely close, because long before any star learned to shine, or any planet learned to spin through its lonely orbit, there was a moment when the entire universe inhaled for the very first time. A slow, deep breath, powerful enough to open the door to existence itself. The ancient ones called it the Great Breath, a motion so subtle it could have gone unnoticed, yet so immense it awakened the infinite darkness that had been sleeping since the beginning of beginnings. Pause for a moment and feel your own breath right now, gentle as you inhale, softer as you exhale. Then imagine that rhythm once trembled across a limitless void, the way a tide strikes a cliff and begins to carve the world into shapes. When the great breath began to move, the primordial darkness could no longer stay perfectly still. It trembled, it warmed, and the earliest hints of light prepared to form from waves so delicate that if you stood there, you would feel them like the small quiet tremor in your chest when you know a decision is coming, a decision that might change everything. The universe didn't explode or burst into brilliance all at once, the way many stories suggest. It woke up more gently than that, the way someone who has slept too long blinks their eyes open because they suddenly remember there is something important left unfinished. That breath did not only create energy, it created rhythm, a pulse beneath all things, the heartbeat of a song you have never heard, yet somehow recognize, as if a part of you has remembered it for centuries. You might not notice it, but every time you pull yourself through a difficult day, every time you place a hand on your chest just to steady your feelings, every time you breathe out of hope or sorrow, you are creating your own small version of that same vast movement. And like the universe, your life does not need an explosion to change direction. Sometimes all it takes is a single deep breath to begin again. I like to imagine that in the moment the universe trembled with its first inhale, there was a quiet message hidden inside it, something telling all future life that beginnings do not have to be loud or dramatic. They only need a little courage to breathe in, to accept whatever is coming even when the path ahead is still wrapped in darkness. If you listen closely, you may feel the invisible thread connecting your breath to that first cosmic breath, a gentle but powerful truth. You are not merely living inside the universe, you are breathing in rhythm with it. And now, as the first light prepares to rise, keep that steady breath with you, because our journey is about to enter a brand new chapter. Will is not something you possess, it is something that creates you. And to understand that truth, we have to travel back to the moment when the universe first felt the desire to become something more than darkness. A moment Blavatsky names Fohat, though you can imagine it far more simply as the very first spark of wanting, the first whisper that said, "I choose to exist." When the universe awakened from its endless sleep, it had no shape, no direction, no voice telling it what to do, only a faint but powerful sense that it wanted to move, to connect, to reach beyond the stillness that had held it since the beginning of beginnings. In that instant, will was born, not as force or power, but as intention, as direction, as the quiet decision to begin. And maybe you have felt a moment like that in your own life, when you did not have a clear plan or perfect confidence, but something inside nudged you forward. A small but undeniable pull, saying you must try, you must take one more step, even if you are scared, even if you do not yet know the outcome. That pull inside you is your human version of Fohat. Imagine willpower, not as a muscle you build, but as a thin, glowing thread stretching between who you are right now and who you could become. And even when you feel lost or exhausted, that thread is still there, quietly drawing you onward. In the early universe, that thread connected scattered sparks of energy, turning chaos into order, turning possibility into reality, shaping the first patterns of existence, the way you gather the scattered fragments of your own life and slowly rebuild something you can stand on again. There was no explosion, no dramatic burst of color, only a small steady desire, repeating itself over and over, and that was enough to reshape the entire cosmos. The first will did not ask the universe if it was ready. It simply said, "Begin," no matter how small the beginning might be. This is why will is not something separate from you. It is the very thing that formed you. Every time you finish a hard day, when you thought you could not, every time you rise after falling, every time you choose kindness instead of bitterness, you are repeating the same ancient movement that once stirred the universe awake. That is not coincidence. That is the original spark still living inside you. So do not think of will as something you lost and must search for. It has never left you. It is the quiet core of who you are, the voice that reminds you that you are meant to become more than your fear, more than your past, more than your doubt. And now, as that spark of will lights the first pathways of creation, both the universe and your own story are ready to step into a chapter where shapes form, meaning deepens, and purpose begins to shine. When the first spark of will lit the darkness and the earliest vibrations began to form a rhythm, the universe understood that it could not build itself alone. And that was the moment the builders appeared, not as almighty gods, but as the first craftsmen of existence, carrying within them a longing that feels deeply human, a longing to leave a mark, to witness something grow from their own hands. People call them the builders, but I prefer to imagine them as quiet artisans standing before swirling streams of unshaped energy and patiently guiding each piece into place. The way a parent gently gathers the scattered fragments of a child's world after their first heartbreak. What makes them extraordinary is not their power, but their desire, that deep inner wish to create something more beautiful than themselves, a wish that makes them strangely familiar to us. Because if you have ever stayed up late to finish something important, if you have spent weeks healing a wound you never talked about, if you have tried to rebuild your life after it fell apart, then you already know the feeling they carried in their hearts. Picture the builders standing in the endless void, staring at raw, chaotic currents. And rather than fear them, they want to touch them, shape them, guide them. The way an artist studies a blank canvas. The way a woodworker sees a figure hidden inside a rough block of timber. The way you look at your own uncertain future and quietly tell yourself, it is okay. I will try again, one step at a time. Blavatsky describes them as ancient hierarchies of intelligence, but the truest way to understand them is to see them as beings with a dream. And it is exactly that dream that allowed them to become a foundation for everything that exists. No builder was perfect. They learned as they created. They made mistakes and corrected them. They tried and tried again, which is why the universe was not born from a single flash of magic, but from patience, effort, and countless attempts. Just like you, every time you rise after failing, rebuilding without noise, but with determination. And the most important thing is this: the builders did not simply construct stars or worlds. They created meaning, because nothing is ever built without someone placing a piece of their heart inside it. So when I imagine the universe taking shape, I see them not as distant celestial beings, but as workers of hope, carrying a longing that has never faded, a longing that humanity inherited, the desire to turn chaos into something we can love, to create something that allows us to say, I lived, and my life mattered. And now, as the layers of the universe settle into place, our journey is ready to enter the phase where the first true structures of reality begin to appear, like a blueprint slowly revealing itself under the hands of those who believed that to build is also to discover who you are. Evolution is not a straight line. It is a spiral that moves through darkness. And if you look closely at your own life, you will see how true that is. Because no one grows in a smooth upward line. All of us turn in circles through mistakes, losses, fears, and then catch a bit of light to move on, just as the universe had to travel through 7 great journeys before it understood who it truly was. Blavatsky calls them the 7 rounds, but you can think of them as 7 times the universe stepped into the dark, so that it could rise stronger. And strangely enough, each round mirrors something deeply human. The first round is like the universe's childhood. Everything new, soft, fragile, like the way you once believed the world was always gentle. The second round is curiosity. When the universe wanted to touch matter, to collide with the unknown, just like when you grew older and began asking questions, wanting to feel life for yourself. The third round is where the first mistakes appeared, where the universe tried, stumbled, and tried again, just as we learn to love, to trust, to fail, and to accept that life will not always match the stories we imagined. Then comes the fourth round, the darkest one, the great breaking, when the universe felt like everything was shaken loose. And if you have ever lived through a period where you thought you had lost yourself completely, then you have traveled through this round in your own way. But then comes the beauty of the fifth round, where rebirth begins, where the universe gathers what remains and starts again, trembling but determined, just like you when you rise after heartbreak or disappointment, fragile but stronger than before. The sixth round is wisdom, When the universe no longer moves just to survive, but to understand, to grow. And this is the stage where people begin to see meaning in their struggles, where they realize that the light they were searching for had always been hiding inside their darkest nights. And the final round, the seventh, is when the universe returns to its own light. Not the innocent light of its beginning, but a mature glow, shaped by everything it has survived. A light that has known pain, loss, and resurrection. A light that is finally whole. When I read these 7 journeys, they do not feel distant at all. In fact, I see every person reflected in them. I see you. I see myself. I see anyone who has ever felt trapped in repeating cycles they could not explain. Maybe the universe is telling us that this is how it always works. That evolution moves in spirals, not straight lines. That none of us reach our best selves by going upward without falling. That we must descend into darkness to rise into wisdom. That we must repeat in order to deepen. That we must face ourselves to truly understand. And when you feel like you are returning to an old place, the truth is you are rising into a higher loop of the spiral, wider, brighter, stronger. The universe took billions of years to complete its 7 journeys through shadow and light. So if it takes you a few years to work through your own cycles, that is more than okay. What matters most is that you are still moving, still spiraling upward, still following whatever faint light you can find, even when you feel tired, even when the path is unclear. Because in the end, the journey of the universe and the journey of a human being meet in one simple truth. As long as there is even a small light to follow, you will always find your way through the darkness. Karma is not punishment. It is the universe helping you remember who you truly are. And to understand that more clearly, imagine there are quiet record keepers who follow you from the moment your life begins until this very second. They do not judge you or accuse you. They simply write down everything you have done, the things you are proud of, and the things you wish had never happened. And in esoteric tradition, these gentle keepers are called the Lipika. The name sounds distant, but the idea is simple. They are like a giant mirror, reflecting back the parts of your life you were not ready to face when they first happened. The same way, you might look back years later and finally understand why a painful moment occurred. The Lipika do exactly that, but on the level of your entire soul. They do not punish you. They do not cause your suffering. They only mark the choices you made, the hurts you caused others or yourself, so that one day, when you grow stronger and wiser, you can look back and finally learn the lesson you once ignored. Many people think karma is payback or divine punishment, but the truth is much softer. Karma is simply the result of what you have planted, like a tree you choose to water or abandon. It does not punish you. It only shows you the outcome of your own actions. In the same way, karma does not arrive to hurt you. It arrives to show you there is something within you that your deeper self wants to understand. The Lipika record this so you will not forget. Think of the moments in your life when the same situation kept repeating, the same kind of person hurting you, the same emotion coming back no matter how far you tried to run. That is not punishment. That is a lesson returning because you have not healed it yet. The Lipika do not want you to suffer. They want you to remember yourself. They want you to see the strength you once had, the fears you carry, the love you gave, the choices you made. All these pieces form the story of who you are. And karma is simply the way those pieces return to guide you toward clarity. What I love most about the Lipika is that they never force you to change. They only hold everything for you until the day you can finally say, now I understand, now I see why that had to happen. And when that understanding arrives, the pain loses its power. It becomes a lesson, then a bridge, then a source of strength. So when something uncomfortable returns to your life, do not fear it. See it as a memory rising so you can heal it once and for all. Because in the end, karma has never been against you. It has always stood beside you, like a map gently helping you find your way back to the best version of yourself. Your ancestors did not leave you an inheritance. They left you a code. And if you have ever looked at a symbol and felt as if you had seen it somewhere, long before this lifetime, then you have touched the oldest language humanity has ever known, a language of signs that requires no words, yet makes your heart understand instantly. Blavatsky says symbols are bridges between the visible and the invisible worlds. But if that sounds too grand, imagine something simpler. Imagine ancient people trying to leave their wisdom behind even when words were not enough. So they sent it through images, through patterns, through circles, spirals, wings, flames, marks on stone, and marks in memory, hoping that thousands of years later, someone like you would look at them and feel a pull that cannot be explained. That pull is the code they left you. Americans like to say that every symbol is a doorway, and only those who pause long enough to look through it ever discover what waits inside. Just as in life, there are moments you only understand when you stop rushing and start listening. Have you ever wondered why your heart reacts to certain shapes? Why a spiral can calm you? Why a star can inspire you? Why a ray of light through a doorway feels sacred? It is because deep inside you speaks a language your ancestors carved into your consciousness long before you were born. They did not have the internet or thick books, but they had intuition, connection to nature, sensitivity to rhythms we have forgotten. And they stored everything they learned inside symbols, quietly telling us, this is what we found. The rest you must feel for yourself. And symbols never demand belief. They never force you to accept anything. They simply stand there waiting, patient and silent, until the day you grow enough to understand the message hidden beneath their simplicity. I believe every person has a symbol that belongs to them. It might be a number that keeps appearing in your life, a dream you repeat, a pattern you always notice, or even a sentence that echoes in your mind for years. These are codes, all of them. When you feel lost or uncertain about your path, what you need may not be an immediate answer, but the awareness that the signs around you have been guiding you far longer than you realized. Our ancestors left symbols, not to decorate walls, but to remind us that true wisdom is not stored in words, but in how we see the world, how we read the small signals life is always offering. And when you learn to see symbols, not just with your eyes, but with your heart, you realize the world has never been silent. It has always been whispering, waiting for you to listen. So if a shape, a sign, or a message keeps appearing in your life, do not ignore it. It may be the code your ancestors left to remind you that your journey does not begin from nothing but from generations of people who struggled loved, learned, and left you their light in the form of symbols that appear quiet, yet contain entire worlds within them. The greatest creativity does not come from effort, but from permission, and to understand that we have to return to a moment when the universe entered the embrace of Mother Space, the very first mother of all forms, who did not create through force or pressure, but through openness, through offering a vast, gentle room where things that had never existed before were finally allowed to appear. Ancient teachings describe Mother Space as a silent ocean of potential, where every seed of existence floated, waiting for the right moment to take shape. But I like to imagine her more simply, like a real mother who does not push her child to become anything specific, who simply gives them the space to discover who they already are. When the young universe did not yet know what it wanted to become, Mother Space did not command it to shine or to expand. She only whispered, "Try, let every possibility exist," and from that permission, the first forms were born. You have probably lived a moment like that too, a time when you were too tired to keep trying, and then suddenly realized that what you truly needed was not more effort, but the freedom to breathe, the permission to be yourself for a moment. When you release the pressure to be perfect, to be strong, to control every outcome, you open a quiet room inside you, and it is in that room that kindness, creativity, and peace finally find their way to you. Mother Space created the universe in that same way. She did not sculpt it like clay. She let it choose its own shape. The first clusters of energy swirled together, formed thin glowing mists, and slowly, gently, became the earliest outlines of a world. Nothing happened in a rush. Nothing arrived all at once. It was like a child learning to walk, falling and rising again, not because anyone forced them, but because there was space to try. Blavatsky calls these first forms the embryos of the future, but to me they resemble the ideas inside every human mind, vague at first, undefined, but if you allow them to exist, they grow into something real. Many people believe creativity comes from talent or intense willpower, but Mother Space teaches something different, that true creativity begins when you open a small, empty place inside yourself and say, "All right, let me see where this can go. I do not have to be perfect today. I just have to begin." So maybe you have blamed yourself for not being strong enough or not being good enough. But Mother Space would tell you not to force yourself into someone else's shape, but to give yourself permission to grow in your own rhythm. Because the most beautiful things in the universe were not born from pressure, but from freedom. And as the first forms of the cosmos took shape in the arms of Mother Space, I believe she left us a message that is simple, yet profound. That sometimes what you need to change your life is not to try harder, but to give yourself space to start again, to breathe, to dream, to grow in the most natural way possible. And that is the beginning of all creation, of the universe, and of you. Loneliness is not meant to separate you from others, but to return you to yourself. And to understand this through the lens of the secret doctrine, we must remember that light and darkness are not opposing forces, but two complementary aspects of a single cosmic process, a rhythmic movement through which human consciousness expands. In Blavatsky's system, darkness is never evil. It is the primordial state, the womb of space, the silent matrix in which every potential rests before light arises. Light appears only when darkness permits it. And within the human heart, these two principles follow the same law. When you enter a period of loneliness, you are not being cast out of the world. You are entering your own inner space, the personal echo of that primordial stillness where the subtlest movements of the soul can finally be heard beneath the noise of daily life. Humans fear the darkness within themselves, fear emptiness, fear moments when no one stands beside them. But through the language of the universe, that is precisely when the true self begins to surface. Light is awareness, clarity, recognition, while darkness is depth, memory, the reservoir of countless experiences carried through lifetimes. In solitude, these two forces meet in the human heart. Just as in the dawn of creation, they met to set the universe in motion. Without their meeting, one lives only on the surface of the self. The ancestors and ancient teachers did not leave us explicit instructions. They left symbols of contemplation, circles, small lamps, dualities such as day and night, or fire and shadow, reminders that the inward journey is essential to all evolution. When the soul enters loneliness, it is not falling into absence, but returning to the same primordial space from which the first light emerged. In cosmogenesis, the first radiance did not burst forth as a blinding flash, but as a faint point of awareness, awakening within an ocean of stillness. Humans are no different. When outer sounds fade, and there is no one left for you to perform for, you return to the earliest state of consciousness, and there you see with a clarity impossible, under the bright glare of daily life. You see the wounds that have not healed, the dreams you buried, the questions you avoided. Light helps you walk forward, but darkness helps you understand why you walk at all, which is why loneliness does not drop you into a void. It prepares you. It does not separate you from the world. It separates you from illusion, so that what is essential can rise. And when the heart begins to recognize this, it becomes clear that light and shadow within you are not in battle. They are allies in your becoming. Without darkness, light would have no place to be born. Without light, darkness would never be understood. And without loneliness, the heart would never hear the sound of its own truth. So when you find yourself entering that inner stillness, do not call it being lost. Call it returning, because just as the universe once did, you too are preparing to generate a new light from within. Sometimes falling is the only way to learn how to fly. And in the spirit of the secret doctrine, the fall of the builders was never a tragedy or rebellion, but a necessary phase in the expansion of cosmic consciousness. Much like how a soul must descend into denser worlds to learn lessons that pure light cannot teach. The builders, those primal architects of form, carried within them the intelligence to shape the earliest outlines of existence. Yet to complete their task, they had to step into the gravitational field of matter, had to accept being drawn downward. The way of flame must touch wood before it can grow brighter. Their descent was not punishment, but invitation. An invitation to enter limitation in order to understand structure, to enter shadow to understand illumination, to bring the essence of spirit into the density of form. And if you look at this through the lens of human experience, you will recognize something deeply familiar, because there are moments when we too must fall out of what we thought was safety, fall out of certainty, fall out of the version of ourselves we clung to in order to discover the wings we never knew we had. Blavatsky describes the builders as beings divided, with one part remaining in the higher light and another choosing to descend into the lower planes to construct the world of forms. And from this division, humanity eventually emerges. The message is clear. No evolution comes without loss, no illumination without shadow, no growth without an encounter with the ground. When the builders entered the heavy realm of substance, they lost for a moment their wholeness. Yet that loss opened the possibility for the world to diversify, to unfold into countless forms, just as every human being must shed a little innocence, to learn compassion, shed a little pride, to learn humility, and confront their limits in order to understand what true freedom feels like. Their fall is not distant mythology. It repeats itself in every person. In every moment, you feel pushed into a place you did not choose. In every time life strips you of what you relied on. In every season where you feel unlike yourself. But if the builders had to descend in order to raise the world upward, perhaps you too are doing the same, descending not to be defeated, but to learn, to deepen, to become whole. And when you look back, you realize the times you thought you were falling were the very times you were being prepared for a higher perception. They did not fall because they were weak. They fell because it was the only way to bring light into matter. And you do not fall because you have failed. You fall because the universe is teaching you where your wings are hidden. The fall of the builders is not a crack in the story of creation, but a reminder that even the greatest beings must go downward to rise higher. And that is the ancient code left for us, that sometimes the only way to learn how to fly is to dare to fall once. Your ancestors did not leave you an inheritance. They left you a code, and nowhere in the secret doctrine is that code clearer than in the journey of the human monad, the primordial spark of consciousness that breaks away from the great ocean of universal being and begins its long solitary road through worlds, forms, and lifetimes in order to remember the very source from which it came, not through external knowledge, but through every experience, scar, awakening, and moment of darkness it must walk through alone. Blavatsky describes the monad as an immortal point of awareness, indivisible and eternal. Yet to express itself as a human soul, it must descend through layers of matter, through countless incarnations, through cycles of forgetting and rediscovering, losing the purity of its origin so it can learn the weight of limitation, the pull of instinct, the fire of desire, the meaning of love, and the depth of suffering that makes humanity more complex than any other form of life. This journey is called the lonely road, not because the monad is truly abandoned, but because no one can walk it in its place. And there is no shortcut that can carry it back to the light, just as no one can answer for you the quiet question of what your life is meant to be. As the monad descends into the lower worlds, it grows heavier, wrapped in ego, confusion, longing, and the turbulence of thought. Yet these veils are not failures, but classrooms, mirrors showing the parts of the soul that are not yet understood. If you look into your own life, you will notice familiar echoes, moments when you too walk in uncertainty, carrying questions about belonging, purpose, or why certain trials seem too heavy for one heart to bear. But behind every difficulty is a subtle movement drawing you toward inner maturity. Loneliness appears again and again on this path, yet that loneliness is like the darkness before dawn, the stillness before a new understanding arrives, because no one can tell you who you are, only you can hear that whisper when the world finally quiets. The ancestors understood this, which is why they left stories of rebirth, of cycles, of souls gathering fragments of experience across ages, like characters in a code that only reveals its meaning after enough pieces have been lived. The human monad does not evolve in a straight line. It loops, repeats, falls, rises, and often seems to circle back. But each return is to a higher turn of the spiral, just as you might mistake your growth for stagnation, when in truth, you are ascending through deeper layers of yourself. And what makes this journey beautiful is that no matter how solitary it feels, it is never pointless, because every lesson learned, every wound healed, every moment of honesty with yourself inscribes another symbol into the ancient code your ancestors left behind, reminding you that you are not a lost fragment in a vast universe, but part of an eternal movement seeking its way back to the original light. When you understand this, you see that the lonely road of the soul is not a curse, but a promise that no matter how far you wander, or how many times you fall, in the end, you will recognize the path home. For the human monad was created for that purpose from the very beginning. Your journey is not to find the universe, but to become someone the universe can find. And in the spirit of the secret doctrine, this is not a metaphor, but a truth about consciousness. Because the universe is not an empty machine, but a field of immense intelligence, where every soul carries a unique signature, a frequency, a name written not in words, but in vibration. And as you grow through lifetimes, choices, and lessons that test the deepest parts of you, that vibration becomes clearer until the universe can recognize you among the countless forms moving within it. Your ancestors did not leave you an inheritance. They left you a code, and that code is the journey of shaping your inner resonance so it aligns with the larger mind of the cosmos, so that at a certain moment you no longer search outward for truth, but realize that truth has been moving towards you the entire time. In Blavatsky's cosmology, every soul carries the subtle memory of its descendings and ascendings, of the times it fell and the times it rose, of the moments it thought it was lost, but was actually being drawn closer to its own center. And these memories gradually give the soul a recognizable form within the boundless space, like a faint star, slowly brightening until higher beings can see it. Many think the spiritual path is a quest to hunt for truth, but the secret doctrine suggests that truth is not hiding. It simply waits for the moment when you become quiet enough, deep enough, and sincere enough for it to recognize you. Just as a wave does not seek the ocean, it only becomes so true to itself that the ocean naturally embraces it. Every time you walk through pain without losing compassion, every time you survive loss without losing gratitude, every time you sit alone in darkness and still protect a small light in your chest, you give shape to your soul's name in the memory of the universe, not through letters but through qualities. And then one day, often in the most ordinary moment, a meaning opens. A question you carried for years becomes clear. A symbolic door you thought was locked suddenly opens. That is the moment the universe recognizes you, remembers you, The way one old friend recognizes another returning from a very long journey. It is not a miracle. It is the natural result of living in alignment with who you truly are. And when it happens, you understand that every loop, every fall, every lonely season, every night you questioned the road existed only so that your name could grow brighter in the mind of the universe. Because you were not born to chase something distant. You were born to become clear enough for the universe to call you by your true name. And when it does, you know your journey has finally merged with something far greater. Something your ancestors encoded long ago to guide you back to the original light.